Dr. Pan?
So first of all, I want to thank you all for your presentations. And I appreciate that the CCE has not yet even met. And someone who's been involved in quality improvement efforts in the healthcare field and other big we call it organization, whatever sector. I just, certainly I appreciate you saying that thank you, but we don't need more resources perhaps right now. But and I think if you're really going to follow along the lines that this is going to be a non-punitive, this is really about helping people. I think what you're going to, I think that in terms of capacity, I mean, just thinking how big the state is, how varied the school districts are and so forth, and if we're really going to be supportive. And in some senses, you know what, the districts who want the help, who are doing well, won't probably need a whole lot of resources. They'll come to you and you give a little help and that's fine. I don't think you can just have like a website full of best practices and say, well, your low performing school districts, start looking these up. There's going to be a lot of hands-on things that need to be done to get people into a quality improvement, even type mind or model. I mean, if you talk to any business or any organizations try to implement quality improvement, I mean, it's not just do this, it's a culture change in the organization. And my guess is that well-performing school districts probably already halfway there, but the ones that you're looking at saying, hey, you need to do improvement, we're here to help you with the improvement, you're probably going to have to be much more intensive, whether it's directly or you contract something, and then also thinking about, frankly, where the resources are going to come from. My guess is that these are still going to be, even with LCFF, districts that have more challenges, that already have their resources consumed by the needs of their students, and may need even some, when they say external resource, I mean, that technical help and so forth, unless you're planning to send a bill to the school district for or tell them they have to hire consultants, my guess is that actually they're going to need more direct help with the resources that attach that, whether it's from their County Board of Office of Education or from the CCEE. So I know as we're getting this started, but I also see then the plan, we're counting a lot on the CCE to do a lot of work, and I don't want to underestimate what it's going to take to actually get that done in the way that you're all describing here today. So I just want to keep a close eye on that and appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Senator Allen.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone else who had a chance to speak. It's very interesting today. Maybe Ms. Burr or one of the other panelists could speak to some of the unique challenges that LCAP has placed on smaller districts and smaller county offices of education, some of the concerns and feedback you may have heard from them, and ways that we can make sure that this is a helpful process in a real way, and not just a process that makes additional work without creating the sort of cultural changes that Senator Pan talks about.
Okay, sure, thank you. I will, and Mr. Allen could also add if I miss anything. Well, first, I think we tried to model this notion of continuous learning because we put an LCAP in place, an LCAP template in place relatively quickly, trying to respond to legislative deadlines. And when it got out in the field, they went, yikes, right. This is hard to understand, it's cumbersome, I'm not sure it really does what you want it to do. Yeah. So we went back to the drawing board, and we have been so enriched by the stakeholder input that we've received. I really appreciate all of that. And we made changes. We made substantial changes to it. So now we're in another process. We're in another iteration. This is the first year of the revised template. So far, the feedback is very good, so hopefully it won't create an additional burden. We did provide some additional funding to county offices of education because of their role. There's additional funding that's proposed in the governor's budget for that purpose as well. So we'll keep looking at that, and we will be open to changes that should be made. I do think, and I'll just go back to what the legislative analyst said about the scope of the priorities and the scope of the performance indicators is pretty daunting. It's daunting if you're the biggest district in the state, let alone a small district. So I think it behooves us to take a look at that and say, is that too many? How do we prioritize? Do we ask them to address certain priorities every year and other priorities every 3 to 5 years? What does that look like? Again, I think it's an evolving practice. And we do have to keep in mind, I think, Senator Allen, that we have the median size of our district in the state, Rick Simpson told me, who knows everything, that it's 6,000 students. It's, we tend to think of everything in the LA, San Diego, Elk Grove size. And that's not the case. Those are the exceptions. So we have to be very conscious of that, and we'll continue to look at that. The one thing that Mr. Allen mentioned earlier is the piece that we haven't yet seen how it works, and we're very hopeful for, is the annual update. Remember, we've just completed the first year. Now districts can look back and say, did we do what we thought we were going to do? How do we need to adjust? And I'm hopeful that that's going to provide a lot of information, and hopefully will provide information about how do we hone in on what's the most important thing and make sure that we adjust our requirements accordingly.
Okay. I appreciate the conversation today and kind of the update about what's going on. It is a work in progress. And if you're going to do continuous learning, it sounds like it's forever going to be a continuous progress issue. But it does beg for a little check-in about how we are doing and, how our students are doing. And I know parents, et cetera. For me, in my district, the LCAP process was a little bumpy, not exactly what you would wish for. Districts are having a lot of difficulty being inclusive because they've been used to just the PTAs, perhaps, et cetera. And that's not exactly what the process is trying to get to, et cetera. Ideas about special funding for foster kids, is that part really integrated in their plans or not? Community schools, the other issues that are surrounding what some districts get to do and not do, et cetera. So it is a work in progress, but we are concerned because we are the policy committee and want to make sure that this pathway that we're on is going to be successful for our kids. And so this is a necessary check on how this system is working. And I know it's still, if we haven't gotten the rubrics yet, it won't be done until later on this fall. And so we just, this is a continuous conversation, just like continuous learning. So I do appreciate the time that you've spent with us today, and I think it's time for public comment. And if there's anybody who would like to address us and express some concerns, please come to the microphone, address yourself, and identify yourself, and keep it to 30 seconds. Thank you. Oh, good. There's not a line. All right. Maybe you get a minute instead. Okay. Please.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Jeff Vaca, representing the California Association of School Business Officials. And many of the folks that we represent are the chief business officials in the school districts. I think they're widely considered to be the numbers people. I think we view them in our organization as much more than that. But they are the ones that are, for the most part, tasked with making the numbers piece of the LCFF and the LCAP's work. And I just want to build on a couple of comments that were made during the hearing today. One is to point out, and I don't recall if Mr. Cabral mentioned this in his testimony, but I know it's in the report that the legislative analyst released this week, that there were some changes made in the LCAP template over the summer as the state board was working through the process of the regulations. And so districts will be working with a new LCAP template in year 2 than they were working with in year 1. And I think the changes that were made in that LCAP template were all positive changes. And I think that they will go a long way towards the user friendliness of the document, both from the district standpoint, the LEA standpoint, and the standpoint of communities. And then just very quickly, when my sons were going through a program in elementary school called Partners in Learning, the teacher said until she was blue in the face that learning is a journey, not a race. And I think that we would hope that people view this LCFF implementation period as a transitional period. This is the most radical change in the way that we fund schools that has taken place in the last 40 years. I don't think any CBO would tell you that their LCAP in the first year was perfect. I've seen some things myself that have made me slap my forehead, and but I think that they want to get better. And I think that our organization wants to be part of the solution rather than part of the problem. But there's a lot of goodwill out there. Everybody shares the same goals. And emphasizing what board member Ms. Burr said, I hope we stay focused on support rather than on punitive measures when we get to speaking about the role of the CCE. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Melissa San Miguel, and I'm with the Foster Ed California, an initiative of the National Center for Youth Law. We've been actively involved in supporting the passage and implementation of LCFF to ensure it benefits foster youth as intended. And I'm also here on behalf of other colleagues of the Children's Law Center, the Alliance for Children's Rights Public Counsel, the Children's Advocacy Institute, and the Alliance for Child and Family Services, as well as the John Burton Foundation, who would be here if they could, except they had a previously scheduled meeting with Director Lightborn of CDSS to discuss child welfare budget priorities. I wanted to issue some remarks as relates to LCFF implementation and foster youth. As you know, foster youth are the state's children, and they have the worst educational outcomes of any student group in the state. Research has shown that foster youth are far more likely to drop out than any other student, and amongst 12th graders, those that make it at 12th grade, only 58% graduate from high school. And Senator, you have led the charge on ensuring post-secondary success for foster youth and going to the community colleges. LCFF is our opportunity to turn those numbers around by providing the education services and supports the foster youth need to succeed in school. And I want to highlight two issues in particular as it relates now to the LCFF rollout. First, our analysis of the LCAPs for the 10 districts with the largest enrollment of foster youth indicates that districts need assistance in order to provide that support effectively. We saw high variability in how districts plan to improve the educational outcomes of foster youth, and relatively few districts plan to provide them unique supports and services specific to their experience. Some districts have promising plans for the youth, such as LAUSD, which has chosen to invest $9.9 million to hire 75 foster youth counselors and foster youth specific social workers, and other smaller districts have made similar strategic investments. Moreover, there are inconsistencies in state statutes that have prevented some children in foster care from accessing key educational services. The definition of foster youth in LCFF includes all foster youth, regardless of what living arrangement the state places them in. This does not match the definition of foster youth in the state's foster youth services program, which is a state-administered, county-run education support program. This program is limited by statute to serving foster youth placed in non-relative care settings, such as in group homes. This misalignment means that foster youth who are placed with relatives and foster youth with an open child welfare case in other settings are not eligible or funded to receive services from this program. This means that deserving foster youth are actually denied services. Because foster youth programs are not authorized or funded to support and serve foster youth in relative foster care settings, only about 30% of California's foster youth population are eligible to receive FYS support. And we look forward to working on this issue with you this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and Senator Kelly. My name is Martha Zaragoza-Diaz, and I'm here representing Californians Together and the California Association for Bilingual Education. Last year, our organization, in conjunction with the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, reviewed 30 LCAPs of districts with highest numbers of English learners. And our findings were similar to that of the LAO's office with regards to English learners. We saw that there was a lack of baseline data specific to English learners and other unduplicated pupils, the inability to distinguish ongoing activities to new ones, insufficient data to determine whether the services were indeed increased or improved for English learners as well as other unduplicated pupils, especially with regards to the use of district-wide and school-wide funds in terms of how they would be used specifically for our unduplicated pupils. In addition, there were two other findings that the LAO did not include. One was the fact that there were some LCAPs and budgets that weren't necessarily aligned to one another, not adequately aligned, let me put it that way. In the budget, they would have certain budget line items that may not necessarily have been reflected in the LCAP, or in the LCAP, they had activities that weren't necessarily reflected in the budget. We don't believe that this was done to be evil is just, I think, an oversight, but that was one of the findings that we found. Another one was that there was a lack of translated materials on pertinent information, pertinent documents that should have been available to parents that did not speak English. Also, the lack of translators in quite a few of the parent engagement meetings that were held. And we believe that this affects how well our non-English speaking parents can participate in the LCAP review. So why did we review the district's LCAPs? We reviewed them with the purpose of strengthening our training for parents and having them be able to work more effectively with districts. That was the purpose of why we reviewed these 30 LCAPs with an EL perspective. So we are hoping that these results or these findings will allow, or not allow, but hopefully the County Office of Education or CCEE or CDE need to better develop direction and clarity with regards to these issues. Additionally, we believe that there may be additional resources required, as Ms. Liz Guillen stated previously, with regards to developing effective parent engagement, especially for our non-English speaking parents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Stephen Blake, representing Children Now. We are very grateful to you for holding this hearing, which we hope will be the first of many to talk openly here about what accountability can be into the future. As you know, Children Now was at the forefront of the push for LCFF, and we think that LCFF, in concert with our new standards, new assessments, these many changes that are in play, bring great promise for students today and tomorrow. There is much at play in this accountability conversation, in which we think accountability is the linchpin of success for all of these reforms that you've put in place. We've heard talk about LCAP, the revision of the API, and that aspect of the accountability system. There is the school accountability report card. There's also teacher preparation with new standards being developed at the CTC, new assessments coming online, new assessments being contemplated for science right now, even as the SBAC is coming into play. And then we think one of the most promising things in play right now is the creation of this collaborative, which brings capacity building into the dialogue about standards and accountability for the first time in a meaningful way in these 20 years that we've been talking about it. Obviously, there's much to figure out on what the CCEE role and the role of others in supporting capacity is going to be, but we would really encourage this legislature to think very broadly about that. So many districts, and schools, even those that have many successes, may have a weakness of some sort, and if we can think broadly about how we develop a state role and some form of capacity of whatever nature, developed by or delivered by whomever, wherever, these will be key to making sure that we can promote the success of our schools and through that the success of students. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board member, committee members. Sarah Lillis with EdVoice, and former board member. Thank you. Mostly, we really want to thank you, Senator Liu, and the committees for convening this hearing and for recognizing the critically important role of the state and of the legislature in oversight of LCFF. We also have been involved in supporting LCFF from the beginning and are incredibly excited about the potential to meet this promise of actually meeting our constitutional obligation of providing an equitable opportunity to learn for all children. But I think that it's going to be critically important as we define the questions that many of the really important questions you were asking here, which is what is the state's role? And we think it has a hugely important role, the state as a whole and the legislature in oversight and in continuing to refine the law as we move forward. In particular, I really appreciated Dr. Pan's questions about transparency. We think there's still a lot of questions about meaningful transparency about what's happening locally throughout the state and to the site level. And so we hope that we can continue to have those conversations. And again, as we talk about the state's role, it will all come around. We also agree that accountability really is the linchpin. And I think what happens over the next 8-9 months as it relates to evaluation rubrics are really going to drive a lot of that conversation. And we hope that the legislature continues to engage in those conversations. And we're happy to be of help through that process. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Cecilia Mansfield, representing the California State PTA. And I would just want to say that successful implementation of LCFF has been our highest priority. And the California State PTA has invested considerable time and resources in trying to assist parents in being able to participate fully in this process. We've developed some guides these are in Spanish and in English, but they address the 8 priority areas and help parents identify the questions that they need to ask and to assist them in participating. So we will continue to develop resources. We will continue to train folks, and we want to see it succeed, because it really does present an opportunity for us to do things differently and in ways that are more indicative of school quality. I would agree with Senator Liu that the rollout has been a bit bumpy. That's our assessment as well. It's been, that's what we hear anecdotally from our members. And we know that the implementation has been uneven across the state. And especially when we look at the parent community engagement portion. I think districts are not sure, many districts are not sure how to approach that and are not used to the kind of engagement that we're talking about in this process. And we want to assist them and our parents in being partners in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Hernandez. I'm with California Youth Connection. CYC is an organization of current and former foster youth that strive to make a positive change on a local level and a statewide level. We were thrilled when we found out that foster youth was identified as a subgroup under LCFF, and for the past year, we've been involved in LCFF implementation. Anything between raising awareness about the unique needs of foster youth and then also providing specific LCAP recommendations. I would like to talk about the misalignment of the foster youth definition between FYS and LCFF. This is a huge population that's being missed, and no matter where a foster youth is placed, they deserve this a quality education, and we know that relative placement and kin placement is the preference of the department, yet we're not supporting them to be successful educationally, so I would ask you to consider that moving forward.
Thank you very much. Senator
Can I
Allen?
ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Can you just sort of flesh that out a little bit more? You just want to make sure, as your general point, you just want to make sure that the needs of foster youth are kind of put at the forefront of the conversation about accountability under LCFF, or is there something specific that's being lost vis-a-vis foster youth under the current system that needs improvement?
Right. There's something being lost. FYS is a program that has the advantage of understanding social services in the Department of Education to better serve foster youth. However, in their definition, they don't recognize kin caregivers and relative caregivers, so they're not able to serve those foster youth at a school level. So LCFF implementation and the definition is great. It encompasses all foster youth, including those placements, but the FYS program is not being able to serve those youth, and so the two programs that are meant to complement each other, one is not able to serve almost half of the youth. So tens of thousands of foster youth are not being served because of this misalignment.
Not being served by, so is it because they're not considered technically foster youth, or what's the?
They're still considered foster youth, so.
And when you say not being served, who's not serving them?
So what I'm asking is that the FYS definition of foster youth be aligned to the LCFF definition of foster youth.
Okay, and it's not right now.
Right. So it's missing almost half the foster youth population.
Because the LCFF definition does not include foster youth who are being cared for by kin.
The opposite, foster youth services aren't able to serve those youth. LCFF have identified them to serve them, but they're not able to work with FYS to support this population.
Because FYS doesn't have enough, expansive enough definition.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And I have fact sheets and letters to better explain this if you're interested.
Okay, so you're calling for a change in FYS's
Yes.
approach to this. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm new to this. So I
No,
appreciate it.
not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comment, questions? Thank you very much for your patience and your attention, and the panel's closed. Thank you. Thank you for being here.